Children's rights are recognized worldwide, but how they are protected varies from country to country. While the Child's Right Act is rooted in international agreements like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, its implementation looks different across legal systems. Some nations have comprehensive laws, while others struggle with enforcement. On this episode of Untangle, we'll examine how different countries uphold children's rights, the common challenges in implementation, and the gaps between legal promises and real-world outcomes. What works, what doesn't, and what still needs to change. Let's break it down. Welcome to Untangle. I am Amadine Obewe. Welcome back. I've been joined now by a legal practitioner and expert on the matter to speak on this issue. He is the Institutional Partnership Leads at PPDC. He's also the Secretary of the Human Rights Law Committee, International Bar Association, talking about Kenechukwu Agwu. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah. All right. We're talking about children today and their rights, particularly the Child's Rights Act. Can you give us a quick run-through of how we got here and the law across different countries?
Okay, so it's actually good to understand the situations or challenges African children, for instance, face. You've always seen those images of starving children that many organizations, use to paint a picture of Africa. And when you are out of Africa and you say you're from Africa, one of my friends once said to me that before we met, anytime he hears of Africa, what comes to his mind is are those pictures that he has seen of starving African children. So before now, children were seen as property. Children were seen as, chattel, just like women were seen as chattel. Chattel is property that can be transferable, that can be inherited from one place to the other. But what is even more shocking is that the need to discuss the Child's Right Acts and the Child's Right laws is very critical, because a study that was done just about 10 years ago by UNICEF showed that abuse in all its forms are a daily reality for the Nigerian child. Let me give you some of the statistics that I have here, And even when there is abuse, only a fraction ever receive help, right? So they say 6 out of every 10 children experience some form of violence. And 1 in 4 girls and 10% of boys have been victims of sexual violence. Now, of the children who reported this violence, fewer than 5 out of 100 received any form of support. They also found out that the drivers of this violence against children are mostly people who are from families, people who are from family circles, people who the child should naturally feel safe about. We'll get back to that, but Nigeria has the highest number of child brides in Africa. As at that time, we have more than 23 million girls and women who were married as children. Of course, most of them are from poor and rural communities, The data suggests that there's a decline, right? By 9% since the 2023 Act, that's the Child Right Act came. It suggests there's a decline, so we should be happy that things are changing. But that should not make us so happy, because the number, because of our population, is also too much to deal with. That's also talking about the people who have undergone some form of violation in the form of female genital mutilation. And that is what they call female circumcision. And we have about 19.9 million girls who have undergone this female genital mutilation worldwide. And guess what? Nigeria has about 27% of that total number. So let's get back to what you asked about the Child's Right Act, right? The Child's Right Act is a 2003 act, which has novel provisions, and the states are now domesticating it. We've seen it in some states with a little bit variation here and there, but substantially the same. One key thing that the Child Right Act did was to make sure that the definition of who a child is very clear. So that act pegs the age for adulthood at 18 years, which means anybody who is less than 18 is a child.
As a child.
That came with all manner of, issues left, right, center, because it had to do with marriage as well, which means anybody who is not up to 18 is legally not allowed to marry. Now, some states reduced the 18 to 16 based on cultural differences and all of that, which is their own push, But at that time, people were more excited that the laws were being passed. That was the excitement, not really pushing for what should really be in the content of that child. The other thing that the Act did, which is quite innovative, is that it enshrines the principle of the best interest of the child. It enshrines that principle that say, in anything you're doing, whether you are the parent, the guardian, your school, any authority, whatever you're doing that involves a child, the child's best interest is paramount and is priority. At all times, it must be there. Now, some of the rights that are provided for by the Child Right Act includes right to survival and development, right to a name and nationality, right to freedom from discrimination, right to protection from abuse and neglect, and right to participate in decisions that affect them. Children also have the right to choose the religion.
That might be surprising to a lot of, let me say, parents out there.
Yep.
They have a right to, decisions that affect them. A random parent watching now can ask you, what do you mean by that? I'm the parent. I get to decide. I know what's best for my child. So why are you telling me that I should involve them who don't know anything from their perspective?
What is best for the child might be subjective in your thinking. When we even talk about the best interest of the child, a child can wake up, he's up to 18, he can sue the parents for actions done to him when he was a child that is affecting him.
Can he sue as a child now? If he has access to... I understand that part of the act also gives access to justice.
There's something we call the child's next friend. Yeah, I can do that. Organizations can sue on their behalf. They can't sue on their own. You understand? They can't sue on their own. But the act makes it clear that, look, the parents will be held responsible for any act that affects that child later in life. So, for instance, if a mother's neglect leads to the child's deformity in terms of maybe whatever deformity, if the child wakes up tomorrow and says, "Mommy, you caused this," you can go and maintain an action. Though we know, because we're in Africa, your uncles and aunties will now come in and say, "Oh, don't worry, it wasn't their fault, blah, blah, blah." And for the parents, really, if that was a mistake, it's a defense. And if you did that unintentionally, but that you knew, for instance, it's wrong to give tribal marks to children. It's wrong to give tattoos to children. Let them grow up and decide whether they want to have it or not. Because the scars from those things live with them for the rest of their life.
So basically, there are limitations to what a parent can decide for their child, and also maybe what the law says is wrong. How do we find that fine line? Because if a child is growing up with you, as we see it, a lot of parents seem to think, I brought this child into the world, so I'm responsible for the child. But then the government is now saying, this is how you must, or these are lines you must not cross with this child. So where's the balance there?
Whereas you brought the child into the world, the child is not just your child. The child is that of the society. And the society has a responsibility to take care of that child. We had an instance in Lagos State where a parent refused for the child to accept blood transfusion because of religious inclinations. The doctor insisted and transfused blood, saved the baby's life. Then the parents sued the doctor. The court held that no, the doctor acted in the best interest of the child. So there's something we call the reasonable man's test, the test of reasonability. Reasonability test shows that, look, what will an average thinking man do in that circumstance? So, and an average thinking man who we mean here is not an elite, is not a highly educated person. The man in Wuse Market, the man in everyday life, what would he have done in that situation? What would he have thought that would be in the best interest of the child? That is the reasonability. So whereas the parents owe the child a duty of care, they also hold the society a duty to allow that child to grow up and take decisions of his own. It has a long way. So for instance, that is why some governments now, some others were doing it before, but some now have also started going around and picking children who are hawking during school hours. The parents said, oh, we want the child to hawk so that we can raise money. But the government says child hawking is bad. It's a crime.
But the penalty for some of these things, if it, it's understood that, especially in low-income countries and rural areas, that when those parents send those children out for hawking, they themselves can't cater for those children, and they feel that's the way. But then the punishment sometimes includes fines, includes perhaps jail time for the parents.
Yep.
What then happens to the child in that instance?
The society is supposed to take care of the child. There's a social welfare department we're supposed to have in every state, right? But another thing that we'll talk about, like all our laws, implementation is an issue. Because, and when you talk about implementation, you must have funding for that implementation.
When you say funding, are you referring to the government or?
Government, civil society, corporate world. The thing is that we need to understand that the children are the future of every nation. And if no one takes care of them today, we will all live to regret it. So there is supposed to be a provision. For instance, of course, like I said, there is a social welfare department. So oftentimes it's domiciled in the Ministry of Women Affairs, right? And someone has argued that there should be a Ministry for Children Affairs. Now, why do we need to lump children affairs and women affairs? There are arguments back and forth in that, but there's a unit whose responsibility is social welfare. They are supposed to take care of the child, the time during when the parents are under punishment, right? And before a child is taken from the parent, the court would have been able to decide that it is in the best interest of that child to take him away. For instance, a parent who is a habitual drunk comes back, beats the hell out of the children. It's in the best interest of the child to take away that child, right? Sometimes too, let's not all paint our society very gloomy. Yes, we may not have the social welfare structure, but we'll have our own informal social welfare structure, which is the extended family system. The courts can, hand over the child to an uncle, to an auntie, to the grandmother, pending when this other person is able to prove that they are able and willing to take care of that child. Now, children matters are also very sensitive, and we don't discuss their matters in open court, in public courts. And we have specialized judges, mostly the people they call family court judges, that handle issues to do with family and children and all of that.
All right, just to end this segment, because we really want to dive into implementation perhaps across different regions. What does it have to say when in regards to children being offenders, so to speak? We understand that when we are talking about this, we're talking about protecting a child, perhaps a child who is a survivor or a child who is suffering. But there are instances where some children, as we've categorized under 18, participate in things that are harmful, either to other children or maybe parents or whoever. So what does the law say for those people? Because sometimes we've seen issues where an under 18 person is being lumped in a place with over 40, 50 adults, and they just conflict both together.
So if you look at that situation, right, and I have a very plain view about this. We have a challenge with our data system. So when the person is arrested, they go ahead and ask the person what is his age. And it is his word of mouth against theirs, right? And that is what is recorded. I've done so many cases where we find that the persons who were 21 were actually 17, right? So that's data system, for instance. But let's leave that aside. Let's talk about what the law says about that. When there is a child offender and the child is found to have committed that act, he's not supposed to be kept in a custodial center with adults. He's not supposed to be kept in a prison. That is why we have remand homes and we have postal institutions. Though we don't have enough of them in Nigeria. I think we have about three postal homes in Nigeria. But we have remand homes that is managed by the social welfare department. So when a child commits an offense, depending on the age of the child, the court will tell the child, oh, you know what you've done is wrong. He says, yes, okay. For doing this thing, you'll be staying with one auntie. You're not even allowed to tell them you're imprisoning them. You can't tell them, oh, they are going to jail. No. They just know that they're going to stay away from the family for a while. And that place they're going to be is like, is like a school, is another home, but you can't leave that place. Basically what looks like a prison, but you can't say you're sending them to a prison. They're going to go to remand homes, to postal homes. So it is wrong, actually, to keep any child in a prison or in a police detention, any detention facility that has adults in it.
All right. So
that is why even the Nigerian Correctional Service Act insists that no officer in charge of any detention center, of any custodial center rather, should allow any child to be kept there. So the prison officers, the correctional service officers have the duty to reject children inmates when they are brought to them.
All right. Thank you so much for that. We'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll delve into implementation globally. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people. And let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah, blah, blah convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in, and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hued Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hued Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. we bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Huge Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change. Welcome back. This is still Untangle. We've been dealing with the issue of the Child Rights Act, and now we're delving into the other segment now where we take a look at implementation across board and different variations, so to speak, of this act. All right, so we've already established a lot of things within the act. The next question now is, what is the level of implementation across the globe? We know that a lot of the Child Rights Act that are in various countries came from the UN, the UN
Convention on the Rights of the Child.
On rights of the child. So, how would you say the implementation has fared across board?
All right, thank you very much. When you talk about across board, that's like the entire world, right?
Yeah.
So, but we'll look at some countries, right, and maybe we can use that to juxtapose with Nigeria. In the US, for instance, because of the way the US is run, there is no single federal law on the rights of the child, right? There is no, single federal law. The various states have their laws as well. But there's also what they call the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act that provides a framework for states to develop their own children protection system. So that's why there's no single framework, right? It doesn't establish specific rights like the Nigerian Child Rights Act does. There is even each state now have its own laws regarding child welfare, child abuse, and neglect. Of course, they vary significantly because they put into consideration their context, what works and what does not work. I'm sure you've seen President Trump's executive orders. They also have implications on the children over there, positively or negatively. They have implications on the children over there. Then we also, but however, despite the variation in the US, right, so many states emphasize the best interest of the child, and which is a key principle. They also ensure protection from harm and the right to a safe and stable home, right? But in terms of implementation, you and I know that in the US, let me not say they have all the funding, but to an extent, they have a social security system that works. And the state can actually take over the child and put him somewhere where the child will be properly taken care of, right? Unlike what we can find in so many African countries. In the United Kingdom, there is the Children Act of 1989, which is the primary legislation that governs child welfare in England and Wales. It set out, again, protecting children and promoting their well-being as its primary focus. The Children's Scotland Act of 1995, similar to the Children's Act, but this one is for Scotland alone. Of course, the UK legislations also emphasize the welfare principle, the importance of family, and the right of children to be heard in matters that affect them. Now, let's bring it down to Africa. In South Africa, the Children's Act 38 of 2005 is a comprehensive legislation, right? It protects children's rights and promotes their well-being, including child care, protection, adoption, and child justice. In Ghana, the Children's Act of 1998 focuses on the child's right to survival, development, protection, and participation. It also addresses issues such as child labor, child marriage, and the rest of that. In Kenya, they have a Children's Act of 2001, which provides a framework for children's rights in Kenya, covering areas such as education, healthcare, and protection from abuse. In Ethiopia, the revised family code includes provisions on children's rights. So it's not a separate law for children. It's they revised their family code, and it has, provisions for children's rights with a focus on protection from harmful and traditional practices and the right to education. The key similarities is that across board, right, the UNCRC, that is United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, influenced most of the country's laws. Then the best interest principle is also captured across board in all the laws, right? But they have varying approaches to it. They have various social, cultural ways, lenses of looking at these issues. And of course, there are implementation challenges everywhere. Everywhere, not just in Nigeria. Some of the things, the challenges we face, like I've said, funding, understanding, awareness. The Base Law Clinic, while I was the clinical administrator there, we used to go to a school in Kuje. It's a school for the lower class. They pay 100 naira a day to attend that school. So we started the school education program, and we're teaching them the rights of children. We taught them with a song, told them they have the right to do this, listed all the rights to them. And a certain boy went home, told the parents, and the parents came to warn the school. So it's like, okay, so we now have to take time to explain to the children that you have to understand that you have these rights does not mean you should stand up and walk away from your parents. We have our cultural practices that also promote the interest of the child. But the ones we are saying to do away with are the ones that does not support or promote the interest of the child. So in essence, what we are saying is that anything the parents are doing should be in the best interest of the child. So the implementation, again, even in Nigeria, like I've said, so many states have reduced the age, removed some things, changed their fines. It's not just the same way it is, because of course that aspect of the legislation does not fall under the exclusive list. So both the states and the federal government have jurisdiction to enact laws on that subject matter.
That's fair enough. And when you talked about the parents and the children and educating them, that's also an issue that we've seen, letting them know what these rights entail, and for both parents and children. So I guess the next question now is these rights that are based on the implementation you've seen across board. What gaps do you think really need filling? You've already spoke about funding, but take for instance, something, maybe a part or a section of the law is being flouted. Who has the responsibility to begin the process for that implementation? Is it a neighbor who hears a child being beaten? Does the act cover corporal punishment, or is that up to parents to decide? These little things. How does implementation kick off? As long as the child is concerned, it is everybody's duty to protect them. So you live in a compound, you see people who are maltreating probably their helps or their own children. You have the duty to go to that child's rescue. You have the duty to save that child from destruction. If you cannot walk up to the parents, you hope private citizens have the right to arrest. Citizens arrest. Yes, private citizens have the right to arrest. You arrest the person and then hand over to the police or to the right authorities. So, but if you cannot, for fear of what will happen to you, contact the nearest police station. But the issue now is, it is now based on your interpretation of what harm is for that child. Because, there are a lot of people that will tell you, spare the rod, spoil the child. There is something called reasonableness, right? She spare the rod, spoil the child. Are they using rod? Is it not cane? No, they should use rod now so that we know is rod. No. So there is something called reasonableness. Again, I talked about the reasonable man's test.
There is, you can spank a child, but you should not inflict injuries. Don't inflict bodily harm on the child. Don't do things that will traumatize the child's mental health. Right? So it's even safer that you call the police and then the authorities now decide that no, this one is okay. But you've done your own part. Right? Let me also speak to one thing I missed out. In Nigeria, 34 states have domesticated the Child Right Act. But the things we need to do, right, to, like you asked, to bridge this gap outside of funding. One, we need to, bridge the gap between the law and practice to ensure that what is on the law is not just on paper, but it is what is in practice. We need more people to take up pro bono cases to try this. We need to test the waters. Right? We need to, look, people need to know that there is sanction for things they do that are not right. The other thing, we need to address the root causes. Most of the times, right, what causes these issues are poverty, inequality, harmful social norms. For instance, how did we get to the fact that people believe that girls should be circumcised? That has brought a lot of medical harm to children. A lot of people are treating VVF today because of a decision their parents took without their consent. So we need to look at these cultural norms that have become harmful. And how do we do that? We need to, educate the people. We need to also strengthen our institutions. And then we need to empower the communities. People should know.
Is this also a case of ignorance isn't an excuse? If you do something you believe to be in the best interest of your child, but turns out not to be?
Well, if the court finds it not to be in the best interest of the child, you will pay for it.
Even if your intentions were...
And that is why we are saying, we are not saying parents should not train up their children. No. I'm a parent for one, and I know that, look, if my girl, I will discipline. We are all disciplined growing up. But why do I need to live with a scar on my body for the rest of my life? That's beyond discipline. And most times we tell parents, right, can you not punish these kids in the heat of anger? Because the child needs to understand the reason why he's being punished. Most times the children don't understand the reason why they are being punished. And that is why you see people saying, I'm not sure this is my parent. I'm not sure this is my mom. And that is why children grow up with this mentality that, oh, I was maltreated.
And some of them go on to maltreat as well.
Because bullied people are often the most bullies. The point is, don't scar the children. Let them understand why they are even receiving this punishment. And you cannot clearly explain that to them in the heat of your anger. Allow the anger to cool. Give them the discipline and let them know why they are doing it. So that subsequently, they will know that, oh, if I do this, I'll get punished for this. And not running away from the parents anytime they see them. There are some parents that once they are on beeps, the children has taken off. Hide under everywhere. That's not... That's not the best way
so just two more questions now to round up.
Yeah.
This one I'd like to ask on all of my Untangle episodes because that's what we're here for. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions that people have about Child Rights Act? Something that a bunch of people might be thinking, this is actually what this thing is doing or what it's for, but they are wrong about. And then the second one is, how does this law stand in for today's current age, digital technology, artificial intelligence, social media? I saw the other day in Australia, they passed a law that bans, I think, 16 and under from using social media. That is, till you get to that age, you can't use it. So when we talk about protection, obviously we've mentioned the ones that are common amongst Africa, FGM, domestic abuse and all of that. Do these things, is there need for amendments to now begin to incorporate new age threats? Because now children face more threats than perhaps they used to. So those are the two issues.
We've not even implemented half of the Child Rights Act. I'm not a huge fan of enacting more laws anytime there's a problem. You would find solutions in our existing laws. I so much believe that. Now, at PPDC, we have supported the Ministry of Justice, powered by Google, to develop what we call the Safer Internet Curriculum for children. That curriculum has been developed. We encourage schools, parents, you can check our website to get copies of those. And we're also looking at intentionally now moving around schools to make sure to see how they are following up with that curriculum, right? But that curriculum was basically designed to tell children what not to do and what to do on the internet, how to be safe on the internet. Of course, our Cyber Crimes Act also provides for everybody, not just the children. So most of the things that we see on the internet that, the punishment would be worse if you commit that crime against the child. Because not only will the Cyber Crimes Act be used to hold you, the Child Rights Act will also come in handy. So my idea would be, let's implement and have a proper assessment of the implementation before we begin to look at, do we need to amend it or do we need to create more law? So what most Nigerians, I would rather think what they know, but they choose not to believe it, is that the child is not as foolish as they think.
And has rights on par with theirs as a human being.
A child has the rights even before he's born. When he is born. When he becomes an adult, his rights continues. Even when he dies, the human being has the rights. And the right to human dignity is one right that does not accept of any deviation. It doesn't have any exception. The right to human dignity. Children are also humans. Treat them as humans.
All right. So the other issue about misconceptions. What do you think people might be getting wrong or thinking about Child Rights Act, maybe even if it's just for the mention of the name?
Probably they may be thinking, okay, does that mean I cannot punish my child again? Or my child call police on me, blah, 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 blah. No. Again, if you raise your child the way the child should go, he will not deviate from it. The Child Rights Act is there to protect the child, particularly the vulnerable children. Because of the poverty rate in Nigeria, we have people give their children up to help other people. That child that is not your child, treat the child well. The child you see on the street today, who is unkept, who is unattended to, will become a challenge for us later. Because the child will be angry not just at you, but at the society. And they take out their revenge on the society. We know what that will cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Agwu. It's been a pleasure untangling with you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right. You have it, or there you have it, on the issue of Child Rights Act across both in Nigeria and across the globe. The implementation we are seeing, key takeaways include the fact that the Child Rights Act is there to protect your child. It's not there to basically attack the parents in respect to the child. It protects your child. So in any case, you should be happy that such a law exists so that wherever your child is protected or she's protected. That being said, implementation still remains an issue and we'll continue to monitor and see how this develops across time. If you have any issues you'd like Untangle, don't forget to leave it in the comments and we might be here next time just to break it down, clear misconceptions, and give it to you in simple, clear language. Thanks so much. I am Amadou Nogbewe. See you next time.